Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the way that the pandemic has impacted the homeschool community, both pros and cons. So let's get into it. So let's start with the pros. I think that there's been a lot of great new exposure to homeschooling and, direct parent or student-led directed type learning. And because of that, I think it's been really great to see new resources coming around, new companies, new ideas, right? Lots of new creativity. And I think that's something we see across the pandemic is that people are being more creative and coming up with new solutions to problems that existed. And what does that, how does that help us and how does it propel us forward? So in one way, I think that's been very beneficial for the homeschool community, new resources that are available online, new games or whatnot. I also think that there's been just overall better exposure for these types of companies. So I know I've found some new companies or platforms or softwares or freebies or other YouTubers or on and on and on, just from more exposure and having people come up in search terms and whatnot. So it's been a lot easier to find those types of resources. So I think having that overall exposure has been really excellent for those of us that are looking for those types of resources. And on that same note of exposure, I also think there's just been more exposure for homeschooling in general. Because so many people are being forced to homeschool or school at home, which we know there's a little bit of a difference there, is that there's more exposure to what homeschooling is and the homeschool community. And I know I've seen a lot of people say, because of the pandemic, they're going to shift to homeschooling. So I think overall, there's just more homeschooling exposure and the community is growing and there's lots of awesome supports and new ideas that are coming from it. I also think there's been a big uptick of public school teachers sharing resources and ideas, whether it's on YouTube or on a website or Teachers Pay Teachers. There's just a lot of areas where they're getting more actively involved because they're more comfortable in the online space and they're seeing that what they are creating or what they're doing is beneficial and is being used by people, both in the public school system and in the homeschooling area. The other area that I think has been a big pro of the pandemic and how it's impacted homeschooling is discounted subscriptions or discounted platforms. Because there was such a bigger amount, just by sheer volume of people that needed to use these platforms. Thankfully, we saw prices drop in some areas to encourage people to use it or to even support people in using those platforms. So that's definitely benefited me and others I know that do homeschooling. So I think that's been an awesome way that these platforms, have gained that exposure that I just talked about, but also that's really benefited us in the sense of having better discounts and ensuring that we're able to utilize their product effectively. So I know that we have tested out a few different platforms because they've been either free or discounted or some other sort of promotion that we've come across in that way. One con I want to talk about, something that I think hasn't been great, is the exclusivity of the sort of homeschool group of people. So what I mean by that is that there are homeschoolers and there are people that are schooling at home because of the pandemic. And it can often be very polarizing. This binary, you must be either this or this. There's no sort of gray area there. And I think that's not really fair because regardless, we're in similar positions, whether we chose to homeschool or we are being forced to because of the pandemic. And I think it's something that, we can learn from one another and build each other up. And so why there needs to be this exclusivity, I'm not sure. And certainly this isn't happening everywhere, but one of my own personal stories is that I looked to join a Facebook group for my local area. I wanted to join a online group that other homeschoolers, like me in my district, were supporting one another, sharing ideas, talking about things. This group existed prior to the pandemic. And unfortunately, I tried to join shortly after the pandemic because that's when it sort of applied to me and my daughter and my family. In any case, I was told that I could not join because there was too many people that were choosing homeschooling because of the pandemic, and they didn't want those types of homeschoolers or people schooling from home in their group. So I could not prove that I was planning to homeschool prior to the pandemic. It wasn't something that I was able to, in what way do you show that to somebody? And, you know, even if I had materials to prove that I had been planning on it or doing it before the pandemic, these people just were saying, no, we're not accepting any new members. As someone that's not actively involved in Facebook anyhow, it was very disheartening and frustrating, and I really just had wanted to start to build a community with people that were geographically in the same area as me, so that once pandemic was over, because at that time we thought it would be 2 weeks, we would have people to go out and do field trips with, or co-ops, or whatever the case may be. So I really sort of fought to try to be included in that group. They wouldn't grant me access, and I was trying to show them, hey, like, I'm a committed person. I'm doing this for the long haul. Here are my plans. Here's the type of schooling I do, whether it's unschooling or student directed or what not you want to call it. And they just would not allow me to join. That went on for about a year until most recently I just decided, you know what, forget it. I don't want to be part of a group that is so exclusive that they cannot accept anyone from the outside, even if they are choosing to school from home. So those are some of my ideas of how the pandemic has both positively and negatively impacted homeschooling, those that school at home, the homeschooling community. If you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate if you would like and comment. Please feel free to subscribe, hit that bell notification, and we'll see you next time.